Hey everybody, I am Brandon, the Sterile Guy, and this channel is usually dedicated to sterile processing and all the education that's involved with that. But this video is gonna apply to anyone studying for an exam, a certification test, just your general school tests. This will help you set up a strategy to pass whatever it is you're studying for. If you like the content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Let's jump right in. Depending on the test that you're studying for, it could either be really easy to know what you need to study, or it could be rather difficult. Hopefully your test has something called, generally, a content outline, which actually outlines what content the test is deriving all its questions from. Sometimes a content outline could reference different articles that maybe they're pulling stuff from, different books, different website informationals. You need to understand what content you need to study in the first place for this test. Knowing that right up front blocks everything else out, which makes your studying approach much more focused right from the start. Now, as I move through all my suggestions, I'm moving at the understanding that you have some time before your test. I'm thinking 1.5 to 2 weeks or more prep time for your test. Now, if you have less than that, all this can still apply. It'll just be on a much faster pace and a much tighter schedule and is actually gonna take more of your time, which honestly at this point, what choice do you have? First thing, whatever content your test is pulling from, you need to read through all of that once. Now, if you're having a certification exam on an entire manual, you need to read that from start to finish at least once. If your exam is pulling from maybe certain chapters, you need to read those chapters at least once to start. Are you gonna memorize everything you read? Of course not. But what we're working on is the neuroscience of repetition. If you don't have a lot of time to read the entire thing and study, what you can do is you can focus on the words that are bolded, you can focus on the highlighted prominent stuff that it points out in between paragraphs or along the sides of the pages. And a lot of times, the majority of the depth of the information will be right up front in the start of the paragraphs, and then it just continues to expand on it further and further. So if you just need to read more quickly, you can actually start with those main paragraphs and kind of skim the rest. If you have time, I don't recommend that, but if you're short on time, that might be your best strategy. So as you read everything up front, you're not gonna remember everything, but the brain does store things and it works off of repetition. So as you're doing stuff later on, your brain will actually recall stuff and then actually make it a point to put that into memory storage. Now that you have read over hopefully the entire content that you need for your test, your next step is to make flashcards. Flashcards can be made of all the bolded terms that you'll see. Anything that is bold within that text is usually really important to know. So those are really good to put on flashcards. Put the name on the front and then the description on the back. Or you can actually, if you need to, make yourself questions. If there's lists of things, like something has 6 steps, add those to flashcards. This is gonna be really important. This is actually the main process for creating memory when it comes to your test. I would say go out, buy a nice pack of 3x5 cards, which are actually really affordable, really cheap, and then just start writing it. And I say writing it because writing is another step of repetition. The more and more we apply repetition, especially in different things like reading, seeing, writing, you're actually involving all your senses, which is engaging that emotional brain, which is actually where your memory is most affected. All that stuff is involved with memory, and the more and more you activate your senses with memory, the more it becomes effective in holding that. Why do you think trauma is so prominently stored in the brain and presently available in current times, even though it might have happened years ago? Is because it involves so much of the limbic system, your 5 senses and emotions, that it became permanently tattooed in there. Now, as you're making these flashcards and you come across definitions or words that you just absolutely know right now, you don't even need to study those, I would recommend maybe don't put those on flashcards because they might just waste your time. If it's something you just know and it's just kind of embedded, don't waste your time on that. Now, like I said earlier, these flashcards are going to be your main approach to studying. Reading alone is not a completely effective way to study. Some people can do that, but most people cannot. Using flashcards will actually engage your brain in a way that's very competition, that's very puzzle-like, which your brain loves. Your brain was developed to solve problems, and when it is presented in a way to solve problems, it kicks. When you need to eat, your brain solves that problem. It knows you need nutrients. It knows maybe you need water. It knows that the blood is losing hydration. So it alerts the mind and the body by sending signals that maybe your stomach rumbles. It releases stuff into your stomach that causes you to feel hungry. So there is ways that the brain solves problems. It's already meant to do that. We're just taking advantage of those natural functions and putting them to use. That's gonna help us right now. Now, once you make these flashcards, you're gonna use these every day up till your test. You're gonna actually need to set aside time every day, probably multiple times a day, to just be going through those. If you're on your lunch break, if you carve a time out in the evening where you're not watching TV, you need to spend time going through your flashcards. And I'm not saying when you get to end, you're done. I'm saying now you start your second round, right? As you go day after day, once you come across cards where as soon as you see the immediate card and you already know the answer, it's kind of locked in, you can start setting those aside into a different bag and hold those for future, and I'll tell you why later, but store those for now. Because once you have something fully locked in your brain, let's stop wasting our time on it right now. Now, sometime within a few days before your actual test date, I want you to go over and read the entire content again. Yes, reading is not the best strategy, but we're going through repetition here, right? So you've already read it, you've done lots of flashcard stuff. Now when you go to read it again, you're gonna actually see a lot of stuff clicking as you're reading, even stuff that might not be on your flashcard, because you're gonna be in that mode of remembering and your brain's associating things. So the time you read it first time might be clicking in certain areas for the second read. Using these flashcards really makes that reading come to life the second time around. And now we've come to the day before your test, and this day is actually very critical. It is extremely important that you stay hydrated, that you stay stress-free. So maybe you need to plan ahead to have this day off before your test so that you can be relaxed, hydrated, well-fed, not be jumbled up with work or everything else that's going on. I would take this day to use your flashcards. I would put them in shorter segments though. I wouldn't sit for like 30 minutes doing flashcards. Maybe several times that day, I would take 10 minutes, do flashcards for 10 minutes, and then put it away and relax. Watch something funny, read a fictional book that isn't like trying to store this information, but is more of engaging the brain in a positive way. Do something that is relaxing to you. Maybe go for a walk in the park. Now, the evening before the test, you're gonna need to practice some really good sleep hygiene. I would say stop screen time at least 2 hours before you plan to go to sleep. That includes your phone, your TV, your laptop. I would shut off all screen time. This lets your brain calm down all that overstimulation and really work its way towards relaxing. You could read a book, you could play a board game with your family, you could maybe just do some meditation, whatever you want to do in that time that helps you relax and non-screen time before bed. And then let yourself get enough sleep, at least whatever it is that is best for you. Some people work great off of 6 hours, some people need 9. Try to set that up so you have the right amount of time that night. And then here we are, test day. It all comes down to this. The first thing you need to know is that you have inherent value. You are capable of overcoming anything. And what I mean by this is even if you flat out failed this test today, in the long standing of your life, it's only a very small piece of it. Your performance on this test today does not write your worth or your future. You need to know that right off the bat. And hopefully that takes a little bit of stress out of it. It's gonna be okay. Now, the morning of the day of your test, you should be working on those remaining flashcards that you haven't fully locked in your brain yet. But today, I'm gonna have you take some of those old flashcards that you already know and mix them in with your current cards. However thick that stack of cards you have remaining, I want you to take an equal amount, a stack, and shuffle those together. Why do I want you to do this? Neuroscience. The morning and day of the test is probably when you're gonna have the most stress and anxiety, right? So if you only focus on cards that you haven't completely memorized yet, as you go across these cards and you don't have the answers, you're gonna actually cause a negative tone or lens in your brain that you don't know the answers, and that is gonna really affect your confidence going into this test. You need wins. You need to build confidence. Yes, there still is stuff you don't know, but there's a lot of stuff that you do know. And as you're going through these cards, as you come across one and you're like, oh yeah, blah, 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 I know that. That's a confidence builder. And it also shows you, I threw this card in the pile like 2 weeks ago and I still know it just fine. I haven't lost that. My memory's doing well. This can be a really big confidence booster for you. Make sure you eat a good breakfast. If breakfast is your thing, maybe you need a smoothie. Make sure you're well hydrated. If you need coffee, get your coffee. Set your day up right. Understand that your brain is primarily fluid. So if you're dehydrated, you're directly affecting this organ, and you do not want to directly negatively affect this organ on the day you need it the most for this test. Now, the absolute last thing I'm going to tell you is that you need to read your test questions carefully. Understand what it is they're asking you right from the get-go. If your test is multiple choice questions, there's lots of strategies for that, but generally what is best is to make sure you read all the answers. Sometimes the first answer might look like it's it and you just do it and you don't even read the others. You need to compare them. You need to see what is definitely not the answer, kind of cross that out. But sometimes there's a couple answers that are really close and they could both be right, but you need to understand the essence of the question. Is it asking something overall, or is that asking something very specific? So you need to make sure that you're comparing those answers before you just assume that the first answer is the right one. I know I've done that before. I've read A, blah, 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 and I'm like, oh, that's it, and I mark it, and I don't even read B, C, D. That's not a great strategy. Once you read all the potential answers, you can break it down and then trust your gut. Man, I really hope that this information was helpful for you. If you use this advice and you approach your test or your certification exam with these strategies, please come back and comment down below and let us know, how did it work for you? It doesn't have to be good or bad. Just give your feedback. It's all welcome. Any topics or videos you want to see, please put them in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.